Okay. Sounded awkward. Okay, this was one of my most requested tutorials of all time. And for some reason, I just never did it. But seriously, I put this on Instagram years ago and had so many comments requesting it. So I'm finally here to show you how I made this, and then I framed it, and then I hung it on my daughter's wall because it's so dang cute. This makes such a good gift. And it might look fancy, but I promise you can do it without any drawing skills. Even more so if you're in my Patreon, because I made a free worksheet of all the flowers that I'm going to be showing in this video, and you can literally just trace them. And I also made a template for every letter of the alphabet that you could print off and trace based on whatever letter you want to do this for. So if you're in my Patreon, you can go and grab that. I'll link to my Patreon down below if you're not in there and if you want to join for all the freebies like this and a ton more. But if you're not in my Patreon, I'm going to still break this down step by step so you can DIY it too. Okay, let's do it. Okay, for this project, you're gonna need some cardstock paper. It can be whatever cardstock you want. Whatever cardstock you have is totally fine. I am using Legion paper, Stonehenge warm white. I like the warm white for projects like this because I find if you're gonna put them on a wall, it looks a little less stark than using like a bright white paper. You can kind of see the difference here. So I'm using this one. Another one that I really like is Strathmore Bristol. You can use that too. Honestly, whatever cardstock you have is gonna be totally fine. So I just have my piece of cardstock. Then I have a pencil. It can be, again, any pencil you want. This one has an eraser on the end, so I will probably be using just this eraser, but a pencil and an eraser are helpful. And if you really care about the pencil that I'm using, it's a Palomino Blackwing. It does not have to be fancy. We're hardly using it in this project. And then I have some Micron pens. These are archival ink, which means they won't fade if I have this hung up on the wall for a really long time. So try and find archival ink if you can, but any fine liner pens in whatever sizes you want. This is Micron 03 and 05, and I'll show you how I use them both a little bit differently. Then lastly, we're also going to be using this letter template to trace our letter onto the page. So if you have the letter template, if you're in my Patreon, go ahead and grab that. If not, you could print out your own, or you can just draw it by yourself onto the page. And then I also have this page of the template, but I'm going to show you step by step how I create these flowers anyway. So if you're not in Patreon, it's no big deal. And to be able to get my letter onto my cardstock, I'm going to be using a light pad. This is a Cricut Bright Pad, and I have a full review of that if you want to check it out. But if you don't have a light pad, you could also just put your paper on top of your template and trace through a window. Or like I said, you can just freehand it onto your page. So let's start with that. So like I said, I'm using a Bright Pad, and I'm just going to put my cardstock over top and center my B as much as I can. If you've been following me for a while, you know I'm not a perfectionist, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball this, but if you really want to, you could measure. So I have this on my light pad, and like I said, if you don't have a light pad, put it on top of a window or just freehand it onto your page too. So all we're trying to do here is get a really light outline of our letter onto our cardstock. And I'm pushing a little harder on my pencil than I would normally because I want you to be able to see it in the video. But you want this to be a really light pressure line because we're going to erase it in the end. So don't push too hard. Just enough that you can see it on your page. And like I said, this is why the pencil is not a huge deal, what kind of pencil it is, because this is literally all we're doing with the pencil. Okay, so now I have the outline of my letter on my page. Hopefully you can see it a little bit. And the next step is we're honestly just going to spend basically this whole video adding these flowers around the letter everywhere except for actually inside the outline of the letter. So if you have the template, you could even put these through behind like we just did and trace the flowers through. But I'm going to show you step by step how to do this even without the template. So I'm just grabbing my Micron pen, and basically we're just going to pick a flower and start drawing it in, and wherever we hit the outline of the bee, we're gonna stop and we're gonna lift our pen as if the flowers are kind of going behind. So I am gonna start with this one. And basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab a main flower, then we're gonna add some add-on flowers, then some leaves, and create little clusters like this all around the letter. So here, for example, I took this flower-ish, drew that in, added some of these here, and then added some leaves throughout and added another little flower just to make a little cluster, and same thing here. So that's pretty much all we're doing. And these flowers do not have to be fancy. These might look a little fancy because I've added some details to them, but we're gonna break them down so they're really, really simple. So let's start with this one, for example. I'm gonna add it in, and you could do this in pencil if you're feeling really worried first, but honestly, just jump in with your pen and follow along. I think no matter what you do, it's gonna look pretty. So we're gonna just start adding some little circles to create the center of this flower. And then some petals. Like I said, they don't have to be fancy. I feel like so many of us have done flowers like this before. Even as kids, we drew flowers this way, just a center and some petals that go around. And you'll notice I'm stopping my pen wherever I hit the edge of that bee. So basically what we're doing is we're creating like the idea of an outline here by hitting our flowers against that edge. So I'm gonna add a little more detail, kind of darken the center of this flower. And if you're having trouble or if you're feeling nervous about drawing flowers, I also have a whole series here on YouTube of how to do different flowers. So definitely go check that out if you are feeling a little uncomfortable. But all I'm gonna do is add these like little detail lines. So simple, and it can be whatever flower you want. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the example that I did that people really, really wanted me to teach of this project was actually all one flower and one leaf, just repeated over and over again. So if you feel most comfortable doing a flower like this, just do this over and over and it's still gonna look really pretty. Okay, so now that we have our main kind of flower here, like I said, we're gonna start adding some of these extra things and just kind of making little clusters. So maybe I'll add some of these leaves just poking out from behind. One here, and say one here. And I'm really not overthinking this too much. I find with these flowers and these leaves, like with this project in particular, it's just about adding more and more and more. And the more you add, the cooler it's gonna look. And it's just really about volume of flowers in order to make that outline of the bee really stand out. So there we go. I have 2 flowers there. Maybe I'll add, some of these little berries. So just a stem, a circle, just keep doing that. Maybe another set of smaller leaves over here. This does not have to be fancy. It does not have to feel overwhelming. Just do one little thing at a time and just keep adding. I think I'm actually gonna do one more bigger leaf here. And you can always kind of just like jump around and put in different flowers. So if I wanted to do multiple of this one, maybe I'd add one here, and like one in the middle, and then I could add the other things afterwards. You can do this in whatever order you want. So I think next I'm going to do maybe one of these kind of in this area. This one feels very like a flower that I would have drawn when I was in middle school. So again, I'm just inferring that that flower is going behind the bee by stopping my lines wherever it hits. There we go. And you know what? I think I want to make kind of like a little cluster of them here. So I'll just do some more. And that is honestly all we're doing. We're just continuing to add. And then as you come across parts that you notice like, oh, there's kind of a blank spot here, what should I do? You can add whatever you want. So maybe I'll add this kind of little grouping of flowers. So I'll draw a stem that kind of would poke out past this and just add some little buds. And you can add as much or as little to those as you want. And these don't have to feel like, you don't have to feel a lot of pressure for these to look like real life flowers of any kind. Like I said, I find just the more you add, the better they look. So having things kind of like overlapping behind other flowers, great, that looks perfect. Okay, so I'm happy with this so far. I might go back and add more to it, but basically all we're gonna do is repeat that same thing all around. So maybe now I'll go with this flower and maybe I'll add one here. And if you're like me, you kind of like to just jump around and do different flowers in different spots. You don't do them all in order. You don't have to work your way clockwise or counterclockwise or anything. Now, the more lines you can get that are touching the edge of your letter, the better. So maybe I would start like a stem here that's going to go and continue as if it's going behind the flower, and add some leaves to this. Sorry, going behind the letter, I should have said, not going behind the flower. Just kind of drawing, you know, some lines as if there was something else going behind here, because the more you can have touching, the more that letter is going to really pop out. All right, I think I'm gonna just like jump into doing this so that we're not here for, you know, a 2-hour tutorial as I fill this out, but just have some fun with it. Just keep adding flowers and adding more and more and more. And then we'll talk a little more about what the next step should be. All right, once I have all of my outline in there of like most of the flowers, then the next step is gonna sound kind of crazy, but I actually just look at it and squint. And this helps me to see if I feel like there's any real gaps that are kind of popping out at me. And you don't want it to be like a perfect circle, but you want it to feel kind of even and not like there's anything really like boldly jumping out. And for me, when I look at this, I feel like there needs to be something sticking out here. So I think I'm gonna add one more leaf here. And then I actually feel like I kind of want something else coming out through here. So I think I'm going to do like another little grouping of buds, just little ones. And that's the other thing about all these flower styles is you can do them bigger and smaller. Like some of these buds I just did, I've done them bigger over here and bigger over here. So you can change the sizes of things too. So then if I squint again, I notice maybe there should be one more, maybe not right in the top, but like off to the side here. I think I want one more kind of grouping of leaves. And I actually think there needs to be something coming up a little higher here. So I'm just going to add in a few more of these big leaves. And maybe one more something over here. Maybe it's some berries. Okay, I'm feeling happy with that. So once you have your outline of your flowers, you can either leave it there, and that looks perfectly awesome to me, or you can go through with a heavier micron and do some deeper outlining and shadows and stuff. So I'm actually just gonna kind of like darken the middle of the flowers and maybe the outline of some of these leaves. So you'll notice now, even just with like a little bit more black on there, that flower really pops. So you don't need to do it with all of them, but I just like to go through and add it to a few, and like add just a little bit more depth in some places. And you don't necessarily even have to do this with a heavier pen. You could just take the pen, the same pen that you had. Or if you're really confident, you could go with a heavier line weight as you draw these originally too. And because I'm talking while I'm doing this, I'm kind of making it a little messier than I want to, but honestly, like I said, there's no real going wrong with this project. Like the more you add, I find the more it pops, and it's always gonna look good. Any kind of like black floral illustration project with lots of different sizes of flowers and different leaves and styles, no matter what, it looks pretty. So I'm just gonna keep going through and doing that for a minute, adding, especially like in the center of the flowers, I find just filling in the gaps between all those little small circles. And then not only can you do an outline in a darker black, but you can take that original pen and add some like lighter outline lines or lighter detail lines also. Okay, I honestly feel like I could keep going with adding these darker outlines to the flowers forever and ever, just because I love the way that it makes them pop. So you can keep going for as long as you want. For the sake of this video, I'm gonna stop doing the flowers now and leave it at that. I kind of feel like I've balanced them out. And then I would probably do just the bigger leaves again. I would do the outline of the bigger leaves in this darker pen. I just find that having the leaves really heavy outlined makes them kind of stand out a little more against the rest of the little add-ons. So you could do just the outside, or you could do the one down the middle too. I like doing the one down the middle. Again, it's like a subtle little addition, but I find it really makes it kind of like, the contrast really kind of makes it feel a little more polished, a little more finished. Feeling happy with that. Now I'm going to take my pencil and really lightly get rid of my, I'm going to take my eraser and really lightly get rid of my pencil lines. And because they're already really light, it shouldn't be doing a ton here. Like, you should barely have been able to see it to begin with. But right as I erased that, I don't know if you guys could tell, but the pencil line was here. And I'm realizing as I erase it that there's nothing to define that little corner. So I'm gonna add a leaf just there. And this is like, you can go through and fudge this type of thing if you feel like you need a little bit more definition in any area. After you erase your pencil line, you might notice that there's some spots that don't really have anything defining the edge of the letter. And that's where we can go through and touch things up. And that's where, again, squinting will come in handy. So once all this eraser is out of here, now you can look at your letter in total and squint at it. And the only other spot that I'm seeing right away that doesn't look defined is this little corner. So I'm gonna add one more leaf coming off of here that will touch the edge right there, and that fills it in, and now I can define that corner. And there you have it, your completed letter B. I hope you enjoyed making this project. If you try it, make sure to tag me at the Happy Ever Crafter on Instagram. And again, if you're interested in getting these templates or getting other templates for things similar to this, other florals, calligraphy, hand lettering, all sorts of stuff like that, my Patreon is a really awesome community to come be a part of, and there's a whole library of templates like this. So I'll put the link to that down below, but for now, I'm gonna link you to another video that I think you're gonna like, and I'll see you over there.